Welcome to the Spooky Chris podcast. My name is Chris Ringler. I am the aforementioned Spooky Chris. This is my occasional short form podcast talking about stuff, as one does. So this is episode 50-something. For anyone that's actually listened to some or any of them, I appreciate it. There's a point of this that feels kind of masturbatory, like I'm talking into a tin can for myself, but I think sometimes you just have to kind of talk it out, as it were, to get things off your chest and get things out in the world. And hopefully, you guys or somebody connects with it. I've been thinking of late, to say we're in strange times is to undersell the lead. It's interesting because my father will, he'll watch the news, kind of disgusted at the violence and anger and everything, and say how much we've changed as a country. Say, kind of these aren't the good old days kind of a thing, and it's not in a Trumpian manner of pining for the days of subjugation and servitude, but more of a misunderstanding of where we are. And I think that's the rose-colored glasses that all of us look at the past with. The past is kind of our sanctuary, because the present and the future is scary. It used to be something exciting when we thought of, rockets and space cars and going to the moon and all of these exciting things, and it's funny too, because that kind of stuff that's forward thinking, that's revolutionary thinking, that's the kind of thinking that people don't seem to cherish as much anymore. We are interested in the here, the now, the in front of me, and the what's going into my pocket. We don't invest as much of ourselves in the future, and that's a problem in and of itself. But it's interesting that was kind of the thing, was looking forward. Now looking forward, it's scary, because we just don't know. We have too many people in power that aren't dreamers. They're deniers, and they're despots who they don't want to make this world better for the next generation, and kind of even it's interesting, because I'm not going to say pharaohs were good folks. They were keeping people in slavery to build their idols and such. But if I can say anything, I'll say that there's something to be said for the idea of thinking beyond yourself, because that era, and eras afterwards, you were building for the future. These great structures and things, even though they were tributes to yourself, you would never see them. They were for the future. And again, one can deep dive into all of the sins and evils of that kind of mentality and all that. That's not what I'm looking at. I'm looking just at the idea of building things beyond ourselves, and we don't have that much in our leadership. We have them wanting to hold on to power no matter what, and so that we have to pry it out of their cold dead hands. And even then, there's this weird obsession with a nouveau monarchy, where it's like, well, I'm just going to hand it off to my kids, and they're going to take it over, and then they're going to, their kids will take over. And it's weird, because I don't know why they think they're chosen, why they're so special and different and need to be the ones in charge. Because it's a strange flex, because just me personally, I don't think you happening to be rich makes you better than me or more able to lead on a grand scale. Education, experience, all of that, absolutely. But just because you're rich and your family's rich doesn't mean you get to be the king. So it's we don't look to the future, because we have scary leadership. and we don't look to the present, because present right now is in upheaval, and it's scary, and we don't know what's going to happen. So we look to the past, and we obsess over the past. And I mean, heaven knows I do this too. I love 80s music. I love the music that I loved from the 90s. I still love it. I love things from my childhood. It's nostalgia, and that's not bad. Reverence for the past, there's nothing wrong with it. It's when it becomes this fetishistic obsession, and we lose sight of the reality, where we go, oh, why can't we have a better era when we were great, like the 50s, where everything was soda shops and you know, old-fashioned steel cars with curves and, you know, happy families and sock hops, and rock and roll music was still fresh and new and innocent. And like, rock was never innocent. It's always been about sex and partying and dancing. Because even if you want to say, well, it's about love, well, if you really want to break it down, romantic love generally tends to lead to physical love. Just saying. Like the 50s, amazing stuff from that era, absolutely. But blacks were still not considered whole citizens. Women still weren't considered whole citizens. You know, we went to war in Korea. There's no era that is above reproach. And we take and choose the bits and pieces that we like, and then we inflate them. Like, oh, why can't we have the good old days like the 40s and the 30s? And, oh, the great, man, the fashion of the 20s was, fashion of the 20s was great. It was a fascinating time, and it's funny because it was very decadent. So this, you know, the obsession and interest in that, it was very decadent. That was why it was very startling when the bottom dropped out with the stock market crash. Is people had been living high on the hog and had been enjoying themselves and rediscovering kind of freedom. It wasn't that long after a world war. You know, it was around it was near, depending on the time you pick, when Prohibition was going and then, you know, like gone. And then the bottom was pulled out, and you obviously don't hear people thinking fondly of the days of the market crash. Because again, we've had crashes, and you hear stories and stuff, but like the big crash, like you had people literally going on their right out, out their window and jumping because they had lost everything. And we hear about it nowadays, but we're so insular and insulated and self-obsessed, we don't think about those people anymore. We're not. And some of it too is just, I'm never going to be one that's going to sit there and bang my fist on the table and blame the media, because the media is a reflection of us. Like, it's what they built it into what we wanted. So if it's all death all the time, that's because we were interested in it. I mean, the term "if it bleeds, it leads" didn't come from nothing. It stemmed from an interest in blood, in bloodlust. So it's a reflection of us, so we can't blame it. But we're at such a strange time because we are bombarded with all of this death and destruction and hate and anger, and then we foist it on one another. And I'll admit, it's hard to not get angry when you see people that stand up for someone like Donald Trump, because he has proven time and again he doesn't care about anyone but himself. And it's weird that people are still so loyal to him. And it's more they're loyal to this ideal of an America that never existed. We're a nation with blood on our hands, that had slavery for a long time and benefited from it. that pushed Native Americans off of their land into tighter and tighter, areas, so that we could kind of gobble up that land for ourselves. That has used and abused foreign labor. I mean, it's for all the great things that we have and are. Most of that was built on the backs of other people, and that's something we need to come to grips with. It's funny because people will always they complain about when anyone brings up slavery, they complain like, well, I wasn't there, I didn't do it, don't blame me, got to move on and get over it. That's great to say, that's easy to say, but the effects of that slavery are almost incalculable, because we can't see what it did to family trees, some of which were severed completely and decimated. And for a nation that's obsessed with its past, that likes to look to the past and hold it high as if it is something to model ourselves after. If we're going to do that, we've got to deal with the bad with it. If you're going to sit there and say, "Oh yeah, old rock and roll was great, old cars and men in suits and women in dresses and nuclear families and blah 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 was also great." If we're going to do that, we have to accept that there's blood on that. There's blood on all of it. The American flag is soaked in blood, which for all nations are. That's unfortunately the way of nation building, which means that you have to come to grips with it. We are in an era where we obsess over this patriotism and this feeling of America above all. And that's not a new thing either. It's weird. Again, it's weird. Americans have developed this kind of myopic view where we see the United States as this, once upon a time we beat our chest and held ourselves above all, and we saved France in World War II, and we've done all these great things, and we would come on our white horses and save the day when other countries needed help and all this stuff. And that was a swell narrative, but whatever goodwill we've created, we've lost. We're at a time where we're so angry and so disillusioned with the idea of the American dream, because the American dream, was once, a family, a home, a good job, blah blah blah. And most folks don't get that anymore. It's now a job. If you're lucky, a family, and if you're lucky, someplace to live. Not everybody gets an opportunity to have land and a home, house. Not everybody gets barely anyone gets jobs that pay what they need to survive. And some of that is an American thing also of being way too greedy and spendy. Heaven knows I have that aspect to me. So the American dream has changed. And once upon a time, we were also the nation that other people wanted to come to. That was part of our thing, the melting pot. We cherished that idea of other people from around the world wanting to come here to better their lives and to get a new start and to join the rest of us in pursuit of our happiness. And we don't want that anymore. We want America for Americans. We have decided there's not enough for everyone to go around for everyone, so we want ours. It's this I'm gonna get mine mentality, which is a difference. I mean, it's always been there, much like you've always seen crappy parents, you've always seen crappy people, you've always seen murderers, you've always seen despots. These are not new things. You've always seen racism, you've always seen sexism, you've seen abuse. None of these are new. But the notion, and again, like in the past, America's past, the church was the standard bearer and kind of kept people in thrall and kept them in check, which just meant that they kept their sins behind doors and behind curtains. And so many now are cavalier and don't care. They'll sleep with prostitutes and strippers and models and porn stars, and then pay them off and expect that contract will bind them, and like no one will ever know. Like that's the world we're in now. And the church just isn't as strong. The church has its own sins, so it doesn't have as much of a reach to tell people, like, your sins will live on beyond you. Like, don't do stuff to screw things up. People don't fear that as much anymore. Which is funny because our sins can kind of live beyond us thanks to the digital age. But it's disturbing that you look at an event like September 11th in America, in the United States, something that rallied us initially, and I apologize for my coughing. It rallied us, absolutely, because I think even today, our first instinct is to reach out to one another when in times of trouble and danger and horror. To reach out to one another, help save one another. It's a primal thing. It's a tribal thing. It's a good thing. But our second instinct is to slap that hand away, because we're like, to hell with you, I'm saving myself. And you saw that even with 9/11. We kind of talk about, oh gosh, America came together and this and that. We came together, but then we came together in hate. It was horror and sorrow and heartbreak that brought us together, and it was hate that united us, because we were suddenly like, oh, we want revenge. We want them. And that's a fair feeling. But it dragged us into a war that still has not ended. Long after the perpetrators of that crime are long gone, we're still in that war. And we're at a turning point where things are either going to get better finally, again, or they're going to get real bad. And most of that, I look at it as America, the United States has always had its sins and its demons. They just, we elected a man that tapped into them and raised them all at once. He decided to play the part of the devil, and he raised all at once. And he plays the American people sometimes buffoonishly, but very well. He knows what to do to scare people. Oh, they're coming for your jobs. They're going to rape your daughters. They're coming. And you look to the border and you say, oh my God, they are coming. You look around and say, oh my God, they are here. Forgetting that Mexicans and foreign people have always been here, because we always welcomed them here. We forget that ours was a casual border where Americans would go over all the time. And we also forget the fact that Americans are going over there to get laid, to get drugs, to do the things that they don't have the guts to do in America, and then they slink back over the border and act like it didn't happen. So we forget that point, but whatever. Now he's playing they're going to take your guns. They're going to take your freedoms. They're making you wear masks. They're doing these things to you. They're taking all of your Americanism away. They're taking your God away. And it's funny because the idea that anyone could ever take guns away is silly. If someone stops for a minute, just a minute. Now restricting, I get it. But we're not talking restricting. They say they're going to take your guns. The sort of initiative that would have to happen, I'm trying to think of the right word, it would be a war. They'd have to basically go door to door. They could say, hey, turn in your guns.
They have to go door to door, and then are they going to search houses? What's going to happen? Like they can never take your guns, and then they say they're going to take your God. No one's outlawing Christianity, much like they're not outlawing Judaism or Islam or any religion. They just don't want religion to be what we're guiding our nation with, because just because you like Neapolitan ice cream, I may like chocolate ice cream. You don't get precedence because we're different and you just decided, because you have a friend and your friend also likes Neapolitan, and you're both like, well, clearly we get to decide who gets ice cream for everybody because we both like it. You're not everyone. Religion has always was always meant to be a guide, not the way. If it's your way, good for you. Cool. Awesome. But it ain't my way. And you don't have the right, and we're a nation about rights, you don't have the right to make me follow your way. But we're arrogant. We've become such an arrogant country. So arrogant that we can look at essentially stormtroopers in our cities, physically assaulting people, creating mayhem and chaos, like inciting violence, because it's a point where violent protests are never any good. There's reasons they exist, and again, long topic, ain't for me to start digging in like a minute and a half. There's a reason they exist. But the way to deal with them is not to send in essentially militarized troops to go and beat everyone into submission. That's not what we do here. That's not what America's for. We've done it in the past. I mean, shucks, sticking the police on union workers ain't much different. Sending the military into cities when there were riots in the 60s ain't different. But there's a point where we got to be better. And you're not going to put a fire out by dumping more gas into it. And that's what they're doing. And we're allowing it to happen. We're seeing this, like when all of this started a few weeks ago, I mean, a month and a half maybe. When all of this started, like you saw that this wasn't going to be handled right. And some places did. I mean, my area handled it right, which was great. And again, like you don't have to believe in everything that's happening. You don't have to look at every tenet of Black Lives Matter and say, oh, well, I sign off on everything. That's your business. You don't have to look at anything and sign off on everything. But as Americans, we should want one another to live well, to live happy, and to live safe. That doesn't mean you're rich. That doesn't mean you're famous. That doesn't mean you're fat. That means you find your version of happiness that doesn't impede someone else's version. We should want that. That should be the American ideal. It shouldn't be a king dressed up in gold shouting at us and insisting as he calls someone an insult, then tells us, well, it's their fault. They are the insult, so I'm just saying what they are. Well, you can't blame me. That's the golden calf of gaslighting. And that's what we are now as a nation, of being gaslit. Being told that we are great when we are so far from it, and the rest of the world sees it. And I believe there's hope, because I disagree with what's happening, and so do many others. But the system has been rigged so badly, for so long, so poorly, that's not easy to get back on the track. And I'm not ever going to say, oh, well, the Democrats are the way. It's the only way. We have to say, no. I would love more political parties. But that's not where we're at right now. Where we're at is trying to get this country back on its feet, because it's on its ass right now. And someone like Donald Trump, who fashions himself as some kind of king, God king, and lives this masturbatory fantasy of madness, and he has all of these sycophants who let him do these things because it keeps them in power and them rich, and it keeps their interests active. But Donald Trump, he is not eternal. He is not forever. He will be gone. And then what? We're on a dangerous path. And we can break free. And the thing is to break free and then to start building towards more political parties, more fairness, more equality. But it's going to take time, and it's going to take a lot of time. The awkwardness of everything right now is what we're seeing. The pendulum swinging was just one side for too long, and now it swung to the other side for too. It'll be there a minute where we'll see people canceled for saying stupid things and all of these. We'll see overreaction, but things will get back to the middle again. And that's I get it. There's people I always want everything to one side or the other. I get it. Whatever. The middle's a safer path because it allows both sides to win. Generally. And so we'll get there again, but as someone with a daughter on the way and seeing the things that women still to this day put up with, that people of color put up with, that people that aren't part of the quote-unquote norm that America believes is normal, which there is no normal. Welcome to the real world. But folks in the LGBTQIA plus family, all of these people that are still in 2020 trying to say, I'm here, see me. And they're still being told, you're wrong, you're sinful, how dare you? And that's scary. Because I thought, we're supposed to be great and all that. And that's not what makes us great, is telling people they're wrong when they're just being themselves. And then the cherry on top of all this is we're in the middle of a pandemic. And you've seen the worst of people come out. The absolute, utter worst. It is the height of selfishness and callousness to march for your rights, for your right not to wear a mask, to protect yourself and those around you and those you love, because you deserve to go to the gym, because you want to go to the bar, because you want to go to your restaurant, because you want, and I get it. Part of it is this fear of, because people are out of work. And that is a huge, that's a legitimate fear. We've seen, and just in my job, I see businesses that are closing, people out of work, people desperate. And I get it. Absolutely horrifying, terrible. But the thing is that the government, these are the times where the government, why we have a federal government, to step in and say, everyone, for everyone's safety, we need you to wear masks. We need to shut down for a while. But we're going to get better. And to provide the guidelines and to provide the hope. Not to say school's got to open. But it's not safe. School's got to open. But why? Because it makes us look better. It's an election year. School's got to open. Putting people at risk. Putting children at risk. Government is where they can step in and say, you know what? We know a lot of people are suffering. We know a lot of people are out of work. They're desperate. We're going to sign some stimuluses. And they have. But they're drops in the bucket. That's why you don't spend billions on building a wall that falls down. Because that money can be allocated to the people and to actual infrastructure. That's why you don't build a military complex and say, we have to build up for these wars that we're going to fight, and then you go and pick these wars because you have to prove that you needed these weapons. And everyone thinks that wars make you powerful and strong and good leaders and blah, blah, blah. So they have to go and make a war so they can look good. Imagine if a chunk of that budget, say 30% of the military budget, went to the people. Imagine that. And again, this isn't me doing politics here. This is me just saying, if America's so great, why aren't we? Why aren't we great? What can we do to make it great again? And it's funny because there really is. America was never great in the first place. No country is great, except Britain, I guess. we're all good trying to be better. And America can be better. The United States can be better. We can be that shining beacon again. But we don't want to put the work in. Because the trouble with putting that work in is it means we got to look each other in the eye again. We can't yell at each other online. We can't embrace hatred and fascism out of fear. We can't let people push us into fighting, into war, into rage for their own gains. We are allowing ourselves to be led like puppets, like marionettes. And again, I don't know, there never really was a great era. Every era has some pretty great stuff in it, and some pretty awful stuff. And someday someone's going to look back in this era, and they're going to say, that was the worst era in American history. Somebody else is going to say, that was the best. So-and-so knew their place. They knew their place, and they knew who was in charge. The fact is going to be that there was both good and bad. Much like, and it's society mirrors all of us. There's good and bad in all of us. There's mistakes and triumphs. And we have to start embracing one another's triumphs and encouraging those triumphs and encouraging one another to be who you are and to start seeing one another and hearing one another. And we're not going to agree. And it's funny because you can say, I don't think we should be wearing masks, but still wear the mask because that's the right thing to do. You can say, I don't believe we should have an open door policy on foreign nationalists coming to America, blah, blah. You can have that and still not fight that is who we are as a nation. You can have a differing opinion that doesn't become toxic. And you can tell people that opinion to try to get them to appreciate it and to say, oh, well, you know what, you've changed my mind, instead of bullying them so that they feel no choice but to change their mind, or there will be repercussions. We can be better. We'll never be great, but we can be better. And that's what we should all be striving for. Not in just our lives, but as a country. And I've gotten long-winded, so I'll tie this up. But I just feel like, as I said before, we're on the precipice. And we need to change. Because this America we've built right now, the one that we're riding into the dirt, doesn't have longevity. It's not built to last. All what we're going to do is make enemies of the world, and one day they're going to come knocking at our door with their own bat, and they're going to say, hey, remember that time? And we're going to have to pay for our own mistakes and our own sins. Don't make enemies of your friends. That's a big key, and that's exactly what we're doing. My friend, I appreciate you listening to my rambling. I wish you well. If there's anyone that actually listens to this at all, stay safe, stay sane, mask up. I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.